There comes a moment in every human life when the outer world appears louder than the inner voice. Bills arrive, doors close, people disappoint you. Time passes without visible movement, and the evidence before your eyes begins to whisper a dangerous lie. Nothing is changing. Most people bow before that illusion. Most people allow facts to dominate faith, appearances to dominate imagination, and temporary conditions to define eternal possibilities. But the greatest secret you will ever discover is this: your reality is not the creator of your assumptions are the creator of your reality. What you consistently accept as true in consciousness eventually hardens into fact. The world around you is not happening independently of you. It is reflecting you. It is echoing your dominant state of being. Every circumstance, every relationship, every opportunity, every limitation first existed as an inner agreement within your mind before it appeared in your physical experience. Yet people continue to worship what they can see while ignoring the unseen power that produced it. You must understand something deeply. Reality is delayed. The outer world is yesterday's thinking pushed out. It is the shadow of former assumptions. And if you judge your future by your current circumstances, then you imprison yourself within old states that no longer deserve your attention. The person who changes their life is not the one who reacts emotionally to appearances. The person who changes their life is the one who remains faithful to the unseen while the visible world still contradicts them. When a farmer plants a seed, he does not dig it up every morning to check if it is growing. He trusts the invisible process beneath the soil. In the same way, when you plant a new assumption within your consciousness, there is a period where nothing appears different externally. The old reality still lingers. The old circumstances still speak. The old emotions still try to return. Boo! That does not mean your assumption is failing. It means the seed is still beneath the surface. Most people quit in this stage. They look at their bank account and say, nothing changed. They look at their relationships and say, nothing changed. They look at their body and say, nothing changed. And by accepting appearances as final truth, they unknowingly reactivate the old state again and again. They continue watering the weeds they claim they no longer want. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot assume wealth while emotionally worshipping poverty. You cannot assume love while internally dwelling in rejection. You cannot assume success while constantly affirming failure through observation and fear. Your assumptions must become stronger than your senses. This is where true inner discipline begins. The world trains you from childhood to believe only what you can physically verify. You are taught to rely on evidence before belief, but the creative power within you operates in the opposite direction. First comes assumption, then manifestation. First comes identity, then evidence. First comes inner conviction, then outer confirmation. The visible world is not the beginning of creation. It is the end result of invisible states. That is why two people can stand in the same environment yet experience entirely different lives. One sees opportunity while another sees limitation. One expects miracles while another expects disappointment. One assumes they are chosen, blessed, and favored, while another assumes they are unlucky and forgotten. And over time, life faithfully reflects back to each person what they have persistently accepted as true. Your assumptions are not harmless thoughts floating in your head. They are commands. They are blueprints. They are spiritual instructions impressed upon reality itself. Every time you say, "Things never work out for me," you are assuming failure. Every time you say, "Nobody values me," you are assuming rejection. Every time you say, "I can never achieve that," you are assuming limitation. And life, being infinitely obedient to consciousness, says yes. But imagine the transformation that occurs when a person stops asking reality for permission to believe in themselves. Imagine someone who wakes up each morning and assumes, "Everything is moving in my favor." Imagine someone who walks through uncertainty while internally declaring, "My success is inevitable." Imagine someone who sees no evidence yet continues feeling chosen, loved, wealthy, secure, and victorious. That person becomes unstoppable because they are no longer emotionally controlled by temporary appearances. You must become loyal to your vision before the world rewards you for it. There will be moments when reality appears completely opposite to your desire. That is often the greatest test. Can you remain faithful to your assumption when nothing around you agrees with it? Can you persist internally, while the outer world still carries trauma. See of the old story? Can you hold the feeling of the wish fulfilled even while circumstances scream otherwise? This is not delusion. This is creation. A sculptor sees the statue before the marble is shaped. An architect sees the building before the foundation is laid. In the same way, you must see your fulfilled life before physical reality catches up. The unseen always precedes the seen. Many people misunderstand this principle because they think assuming means merely repeating empty words. But assumption is deeper than language. It is identity. It is embodiment. It is mentally occupying the state you desire until it feels natural. You do not attract what you occasionally think about. You attract what you become conscious of being. If you wish to experience abundance, you must stop identifying as someone abandoned by life. If you wish to experience love, you must stop identifying as unwanted. If you wish to experience power, you must stop identifying as weak. Your outer world onges only after your inner self-concept changes. And this requires persistence. Not 1 day, not 2 days. Persistence until the assumption feels more real than the physical facts around you. The person who masters this understands that circumstances are not permanent. They are fluid. They are rearrangeable. Reality is far more malleable than people realize. The problem is not that life refuses to change. The problem is that people keep returning psychologically to the old state every time they encounter discomfort. You say you want freedom, yet you mentally rehearse fear every day. You say you want success, yet you constantly imagine failure. You say you want a new reality, yet you emotionally live inside the old one. The outer world can only mirror your dominant inner world. If you want transformation, you must stop asking the mirror to change first. The mirror only reflects. It does not initiate. Consciousness initiates. Assumption initiates. Identity initiates. The moment you truly accept something as real internally, a process begins that moves reality into alignment with your state. You may not see it immediately, but unseen movements begin taking place. Conversations shift, opportunities emerge, people behave differently, ideas arrive, doors open in ways logic cannot explain. What once seemed impossible slowly becomes natural because the world reorganizes itself around your sustained assumption. But impatience destroys many manifestations. People plant seeds and demand fruit the next morning. They affirm for 2 days and then declare failure because nothing visible happened yet. They forget that the outer world operates through bridges of events. Some manifestations happen quickly. Others unfold through sequences you cannot yet understand. Your task is not to control the how. Your task is to remain faithful to the end result. The greatest mistake people make is checking reality for validation every hour. If you constantly look for evidence, you're right. Reveal that you still doubt internally. Faith means continuing despite appearances. Faith means remaining unmoved while the old world dissolves. And understand this clearly. Your current reality is not personal punishment. It is accumulated assumption. That means it can change. No condition is final unless you continue agreeing with it psychologically. A person can be broke today and wealthy tomorrow because consciousness shifted. A person can be lonely today and deeply loved tomorrow because identity shifted. A person can feel lost today and purposeful tomorrow because assumption shifted. Never underestimate the speed at which life can transform once your inner state changes completely. The world has convinced people that power exists outside themselves. It teaches dependence on circumstances, approval, statistics, and probabilities. But the true creative force has always existed within consciousness itself. The moment you stop emotionally submitting to appearances, you reclaim that power. Do not misunderstand this message. Ignoring reality does not mean denying that circumstances exist temporarily. It means refusing to emotionally crown them as permanent truth. It means understanding that appearances are passing shadows while imagination is the true cause. If a person stands before an empty room and imagines prosperity long enough with conviction, that inner act eventually externalizes itself in ways no one can predict. If a person persists in the assumption of health despite present discomfort, the body can begin reflecting that new state. If a person consistently assumes they are worthy, loved, and valued, relationships begin mirroring that inner acceptance. Everything begins within. Your imagination is not fantasy. It is the preview of coming attractions when sustained with faith and feeling. Every great achievement in history existed in someone's imagination before it became visible reality. Every invention, empire, masterpiece, and transformation was first invisible. The tragedy is that most people abandon their vision because the outer world delays confirmation. They interpret delay as denial. But delay is often preparation. Invisible foundations are being arranged while you think nothing is happening. You must learn to walk by inner knowing rather than external proof. Wake up every day and assume your desire is already unfolding. Assume opportunities are searching for you. Assume life is aligning in your favor. Assume the unseen is working behind every scene. Assume your breakthrough is inevitable. And above all, assume you are already the person you wish to become. Do not wait for reality to give you permission. Reality has no choice but to eventually conform to sustained consciousness. The person who persists in assumption eventually reaches a strange and powerful moment. The desire no longer feels distant. It no longer feels impossible. It begins to feel normal, natural, expected. And when that inner shift occurs, knife station accelerates because resistance dissolves. You are no longer hoping. You are knowing. That is the secret. Not wishing, not begging, not forcing, knowing. The world belongs to those who dare to assume beyond appearances. While others panic, they persist. While others doubt, they remain inwardly certain. While others worship facts, they create new ones through consciousness. So when reality appears dark, do not surrender your assumption. When circumstances seem delayed, do not abandon your vision. When people doubt you, continue believing internally. When the world shows you reasons to fear, continue assuming victory. Because every visible reality was once invisible. Every manifested condition was once an assumption. And every future you desire already exists as a possibility waiting for your acceptance. The moment you stop allowing appearances to dictate your identity, you become free. Free from fear. Free from limitation. Free from the hypnotic illusion that the outer world has authority over your inner power. You are not here merely to react to life. You are here to shape it through consciousness. Ignore the temporary shadows. Keep assuming the best. Keep embodying the fulfilled version of yourself. Keep walking as though the unseen is already done. And one day the very reality that once contradicted you will stand as proof that your assumptions were creating everything all along. There is a hidden danger in constantly observing your present conditions, because whatever you repeatedly observe with emotion, you continue energizing. Most people do not realize they are mentally recreating the same experiences day after day simply through attention. Attention is creative power. Where attention goes, energy flows. If your attention remains fixed on obstacles, delays, failures, and disappointments, then you continue emotionally feeding the old reality you claim you wish to escape. This is why inner conversations matter so much. The word, as you whisper to yourself throughout the day, are shaping your identity far more than occasional affirmations ever could. A person may speak positively for 10 minutes, but if they spend the remaining 16 hours internally complaining, doubting, and fearing, the dominant assumption remains unchanged. Your subconscious mind does not respond to occasional wishes. It responds to repetition, feeling, and conviction. Listen carefully to the average person's inner dialogue. Nothing ever changes. Life is hard. I'm always struggling. Good things happen to other people. These are not harmless statements. These are assumptions accepted as truth. And because they are emotionally repeated, reality continues organizing itself around them. Now imagine replacing those old inner conversations completely. Imagine moving through your day with a silent certainty that everything is already improving. Imagine mentally hearing congratulations before success arrives. Imagine internally identifying G as secure before money appears. Imagine feeling chosen before opportunities show themselves. The subconscious mind cannot distinguish between a vividly felt assumption and a physical fact. What is emotionally accepted internally begins externalizing itself automatically. This is why imagination must become more important to you than observation. The world tells you to be realistic, but most people use realism as an excuse to remain trapped inside old conditions. They call limitation wisdom. They call doubt intelligence. They call fear practicality. Yet every extraordinary life was built by someone who refused to let present reality define final reality. The athlete who becomes champion first sees victory internally before the crowd ever applauds. The entrepreneur first assumes success before the business becomes profitable. The artist first believes in the masterpiece before the world recognizes it. Every transformation begins as an invisible assumption protected from appearer. NCs long enough to mature into fact. You must stop treating your imagination as something childish or unreal. Imagination is the workshop of creation itself. Every night before sleep, you are impressing ideas upon the deeper layers of consciousness. Every emotional reaction throughout the day is reinforcing a state. Every assumption you persist in becomes part of your identity. And identity is destiny expressed outwardly. Most people attempt to change circumstances directly without changing self-concept. They try to force results while internally remaining the same person. But you cannot permanently experience a reality that contradicts your dominant identity. A person who secretly identifies as unworthy will sabotage love. A person who internally identifies as poor will unconsciously repel abundance. A person who identifies as unlucky will continue interpreting life through disappointment even when opportunities appear. Your life does not merely respond to your desires. It responds to who you believe yourself to be. That is why you must become extremely careful about the labels you attach to yourself. Stop introducing yourself mentally as the tired one, the anxious one, the unlucky one, the rejected one, the struggling one. Those identities become prisons. The subconscious mind accepts them and continuously generates experiences that validate them. Instead, begin assuming new identities internally. I am the person life favors. I am deeply valued. I am supported by unseen forces. I naturally succeed. I always find myself in the right place at the right time. At first, the mind may resist because it has been conditioned by years of opposite assumptions, but persistence weakens resistance. Eventually, the new state begins feeling familiar, and once a state feels natural, reality begins reflecting it effortlessly. Many people think manifestation requires exhausting effort, but the deeper truth is that manifestation follows naturalness. What feels natural to you tends to appear repeatedly in your life. If struggle feels normal, struggle repeats. If disappointment feels expected, disappointment repeats. If success feels believable and natural, success begins appearing more frequently. Your task is not to force outcomes through stress. Your task is to make the desired state feel internally familiar. This is why feeling is so important. Feeling is the secret bridge between imagination and manifestation. A dry affirmation without emotional acceptance has little power. But a deeply felt assumption enters consciousness like a seed entering fertile soil. You must learn to emotionally rehearse the life you desire before it physically arrives. Sit quietly and feel what it would feel like if everything had already worked out. Feel the relief, feel the gratitude, feel the certainty, feel the confidence of already being the person you long to become. Do this consistently, and something extraordinary begins happening. Your reactions change. Your posture changes, your decisions change, your energy changes. Without realizing it, you begin behaving from the new state rather than merely wishing for it. And reality always follows state. The outer world is not responding to what you occasionally want. It is responding to the version of yourself you consistently occupy. People often ask why negative experiences manifest so easily. It is because fear is usually believed with strong emotion and repetition. Most people assume disaster more faithfully than success. They imagine rejection vividly. They rehearse failure repeatedly. They emotionally expect problems before they happen. And then they wonder why life mirrors those expectations. Imagine what would happen if you became equally faithful to positive assumptions. Imagine expecting miracles with the same intensity people expect problems. Imagine assuming alignment instead of disaster. Imagine emotionally rehearsing success instead of fear. The quality of your assumption. Tions determines the quality of your experience. Do not underestimate small shifts in consciousness. A single persistent assumption can alter the direction of an entire life. The moment you stop identifying with limitation, limitation begins losing its hold over you. The moment you stop emotionally reacting to temporary appearances, you stop feeding them. And when old states are no longer fed, they eventually dissolve. You may not realize it yet, but many of the circumstances you call permanent are surviving only because of continued emotional attention. Remove belief from them, and they begin weakening. Stop telling the old story repeatedly. Stop introducing your past into every conversation. Stop defining yourself by former failures. The past survives through remembrance and identification. You are not obligated to remain loyal to an old version of yourself. You can decide today that a new identity begins now. You can decide today that struggle is no longer your story. You can decide today that abundance, love, success, peace, and fulfillment are natural for you. The moment that decision becomes emotionally accepted, reality begins rearranging around it. There will still be moments when the outer world attempts to pull you back into old thinking. Old habits may return temporarily. Doubt may whisper again. Fear may attempt to reclaim attention. But your power lies in persistence, not perfection. Persistence. Even if you fall back mentally for a moment, return to the assumption again. Return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Return to the identity you chose deliberately. Return to inner certainty. Over time, the new state becomes dominant. And once it becomes dominant, the outer world must reflect it. People think transformation is difficult because they focus entirely on external effort. But the deeper transformation happens invisibly first. A tree grows underground before it rises above the surface. Likewise, your new reality begins within Longby. 4 visible evidence appears. Do not become discouraged by silence. Do not become discouraged by delay. Do not become discouraged by temporary contradiction. The bridge between assumption and manifestation is often invisible while it is unfolding. There are movements occurring beyond your current awareness. Connections are forming. Paths are opening. Timing is aligning. Possibilities are shifting. The unseen world is always responding to sustained consciousness even when physical reality has not caught up yet. The person who understands this stops living emotionally dependent on appearances. They no longer panic every time circumstances fluctuate. They no longer worship temporary setbacks. They remain inwardly anchored because they know the outer world is still catching up to an inner decision already made. That calm certainty is power, not frantic effort, not desperation, not endless struggle. Power is remaining faithful internally, while reality reorganizes itself external. Lie. And the most beautiful part is this. Once you truly experience the law of assumption working in your own life, fear begins losing authority over you. You realize circumstances are not immovable. You realize identity shapes experience. You realize imagination is not fantasy but causation itself. Then life stops feeling random. You begin consciously selecting states instead of unconsciously inheriting them from fear, society, or past conditioning. You stop asking, what if it goes wrong? And you begin asking, what if everything unfolds perfectly for me? That single shift changes the direction of consciousness completely. Because the mind always moves toward what it consistently expects. If you expect disappointment, you prepare yourself emotionally for disappointment. If you expect favor, opportunity, and alignment, your consciousness opens pathways for those experiences to enter your life. Expectation is magnetic. Assumption is magnetic. Identity is magnetic. And really, time endlessly mirrors what consciousness persistently accepts as true. So refuse to let temporary appearances hypnotize you. Refuse to surrender your inner vision because of present conditions. Refuse to call something impossible simply because it has not appeared yet. The unseen world responds to persistence far more than momentary emotion. Every day you continue assuming the best despite appearances, you are strengthening a new state within yourself. Every time you refuse to emotionally react to fear, you weaken the old reality. Every time you choose faith over observation, you move closer to embodiment. And embodiment is the moment manifestation stops feeling distant and starts feeling inevitable. There is a reason why some people seem to move through life with extraordinary ease while others remain trapped in endless cycles of struggle. It is not because one group is more deserving than the other. It is because one group unconsciously assumes support, while the other unconscious. LY assumes resistance. One expects doors to open. The other expects obstacles. One walks into rooms already feeling worthy. The other walks in waiting for rejection. And life faithfully mirrors those inner expectations again and again. You must begin understanding that assumptions operate whether you are aware of them or not. Even now, your current life is revealing the assumptions you have repeatedly entertained about yourself, other people, money, success, love, and the future. Nothing appears randomly. Patterns are not accidents. They are reflections of sustained inner states. If someone repeatedly experiences abandonment, they must ask themselves, what have I been assuming about my worthiness? If someone constantly experiences financial struggle, they must ask, what have I accepted as true about abundance? If someone always feels overlooked, they must examine the identity they have unconsciously occupied for years. This is not about blame. It is about awareness. Because once you become aware of the inner cause, you regain the power to change the outer effect. Most people attempt to fix life externally while leaving the inner blueprint untouched. They change jobs without changing self-concept. They enter new relationships carrying the same assumptions about rejection. They move to new places while emotionally remaining the same person. Then they wonder why similar experiences keep repeating in different forms. But wherever consciousness goes, reality follows. A new environment cannot permanently save someone who refuses to adopt a new identity internally. Eventually, the outer world reproduces the familiar state again because consciousness is the true creative center. This is why true transformation begins in silence, within the hidden chambers of the mind. Before the world sees evidence, you must already know internally. Before applause arrives, you must already feel worthy. Before wealth appears, you must already stop identifying with lack. Before love manifests, you must already stop calling yourself unloved. Everything changes the moment your inner definition changes. And understand this carefully. The subconscious mind learns through repetition and feeling, not logic alone. You can intellectually understand these principles and still fail to apply them if your emotional habits remain unchanged. Knowledge without embodiment produces little transformation. You must practice occupying the desired state repeatedly until it becomes automatic. At first, this may feel unnatural because the mind has been conditioned by years of old assumptions. The person accustomed to struggle may feel uncomfortable imagining ease. The person familiar with rejection may resist feeling chosen. The person conditioned by limitation may initially doubt abundance. But discomfort does not mean the new assumption is false. It simply means the old state has been dominant for too long. Persistence rewrites identity. Every time you return mentally to the filled version of yourself, you weaken the authority of the old story. Every time you refuse to emotionally react to appearances, you stop reinforcing the previous state. Every time you choose faith over fear, you impress a new pattern upon consciousness. And eventually, something shifts. The desired state no longer feels imaginary. It begins feeling natural, familiar, real. That is when manifestation speeds up dramatically, because reality responds most powerfully to what feels normal to you. A person who naturally expects respect receives it more often. A person who naturally expects abundance notices opportunities others ignore. A person who naturally expects love behaves differently from someone expecting abandonment. States determine behavior, behavior influences experience, and experience reinforces states. This is why unconscious patterns can continue for years until someone deliberately interrupts them with new assumptions. The world often appears solid and fixed. It is more fluid than people realize. Circumstances can change suddenly. Fortunes can reverse overnight. Relationships can transform unexpectedly. Doors can open from directions you never anticipated. But before those shifts occur physically, they occur psychologically. Consciousness moves first. The outer world follows afterward. Most people are waiting for external evidence before allowing themselves to feel secure, happy, confident, or fulfilled. But this keeps them trapped because they are demanding the mirror change before changing the face standing before it. You must become willing to feel differently before circumstances justify it. Feel successful before success arrives. Feel blessed before evidence appears. Feel worthy before validation comes. Feel loved before anyone confirms it. This inner willingness changes everything, because the subconscious mind accepts emotional conviction as instruction. The feeling of already being becomes the magnet for corresponding experiences. And this is why guarding your mental atmosphere is essential. Every day, the world attempts to program fear into you. News spreads anxiety. Society glorifies struggle. People project limitations onto each other constantly. If you absorb every fearful assumption around you, you unconsciously continue reproducing those conditions in your own life. You must become selective about what you emotionally accept as truth. Not every opinion deserves entry into your consciousness. Not every fear deserves agreement. Not every limitation deserves belief. The moment you stop mentally consenting to negativity, its influence weakens over your reality. Many people unknowingly use their imagination against themselves. They spend hours imagining worst-case scenarios. They rehearse failure before events even happen. They create painful conversations in their minds that never occur physically. They visualize rejection, embarrassment, disappointment, and struggle so vividly that the subconscious mind begins treating those scenes as instructions. Imagine if that same imaginative power were redirected deliberately. Imagine using imagination to rehearse triumph instead of defeat. Imagine mentally experiencing your ideal life every night before sleep. Imagine seeing yourself already healthy, prosperous, confident, admired, fulfilled, and free. Imagine feeling gratitude before the manifestation appears. That emotional rehearsal plants seeds deep within consciousness, and consciousness always expresses what is repeatedly impressed upon it. There is immense power in refusing to emotionally participate in appearances that contradict your desired reality. The average person reacts immediately to every unfavorable condition. One setback ruins their state. One rejection destroys their confidence. One delay convinces them failure is inevitable. But the person who understands assumption remains inwardly steady. They know circumstances are temporary echoes of previous states, not permanent truths. This calm persistence often appears irrational to others. People may question your confidence when no evidence exists yet. They may doubt your vision because they only trust what is visible. But remember, every visible reality was once invisible. Every accomplishment was once dismissed as impossible. Every transformation was once only an assumption held privately within someone's imagination. Do not seek validation from people who only believe in appearances. Your task is to remain faithful to the unseen until it becomes seen. And there is another truth many overlook. Gratitude accelerates embodiment. Gratitude signals emotional acceptance. When you feel grateful before receiving, you are psychologically moving into the state of already having. You are no longer begging life for fulfillment. You are inwardly claiming it. This changes your entire energy. Desperation repels because it reinforces the feeling of not having. Gratitude attracts because it reinforces. See as the feeling of fulfillment already existing. The person who constantly says, "Why isn't it here yet?" remains conscious of absence. The person who inwardly says, "It is already unfolding perfectly," enters the state of possession mentally. And possession in consciousness precedes possession physically. You must also stop measuring progress solely by visible movement. Some of the most powerful shifts occur internally before external evidence emerges. A new sense of confidence, a deeper peace, a feeling of certainty replacing anxiety. These inner changes are signs that consciousness is reorganizing itself. And once consciousness changes, external reality eventually follows. Do not rush the process. A fruit picked too early is not ready. Likewise, manifestations unfold according to invisible timing and sequence. Your responsibility is not to force outcomes through strain. Your responsibility is to remain loyal to the fulfilled state. Think about how different your life would feel if you truly believed everything was working in your favor right now. Not someday, not eventually, right now. How differently would you walk? How differently would you speak? How differently would you think? How differently would you react to delays and uncertainty? That version of you already exists as a state available to occupy. And the moment you occupy it consistently, reality begins shaping itself around that inner decision. You are never merely observing life. You are participating in its creation through consciousness every moment. Your assumptions are silently scripting experiences long before they arrive physically. What you repeatedly expect, emotionally accept, and identify with becomes the architecture of your world. That is why you must protect your assumptions carefully. Do not let temporary setbacks convince you the vision has failed. Do not let appearances dictate your identity. Do not let old memories overpower new decisions. The moment you choose a new W state and persist in it despite contradiction, you begin stepping into a different reality entirely. And slowly, almost mysteriously at first, the world starts reflecting the new you back to yourself. People respond differently. Opportunities emerge unexpectedly. Synchronicities increase. The impossible begins feeling ordinary. What once seemed distant starts moving closer naturally. Not because luck suddenly changed, but because consciousness changed first. The mind is like fertile soil. Whatever you repeatedly plant within it, whether fear or faith, limitation or abundance, despair or confidence, eventually grows into visible experience. The soil does not judge the seed. It does not argue with it. It simply receives what is consistently impressed upon it and produces a harvest in alignment with that impression. In the same way, consciousness does not question your assumptions. It expresses them. That is why careless thinking carries consequences. People believe they are merely reacting to life, but in truth, they are continuously planting future experiences through repeated emotional patterns. Every complaint is a seed. Every fearful expectation is a seed. Every assumption about what is possible or impossible is a seed. And with enough repetition, those seeds mature into circumstances. But the beautiful truth is this: if assumptions created the old reality, new assumptions can create a new one. No matter how long you have lived in limitation, the creative power within you has not disappeared. It remains active this very moment, waiting for a new direction. The past does not possess ultimate authority unless you continue emotionally resurrecting it. Many people unknowingly relive the same pain because they constantly revisit old memories, repeat old stories, and identify with former wounds. They say, "This is just who I am," not realizing they are imprisoning themselves inside outdated assumptions. You are not required to continue being the person you were yesterday. The moment you adopt a new state internally, a new future begins forming. And this is why imagination must become sacred to you. What you imagine repeatedly with feeling becomes a blueprint for reality. Imagination is not escape from life, it is preparation for life. It is rehearsal for future experience. The images you accept emotionally today become the circumstances you encounter tomorrow. Most people use imagination unconsciously against themselves. They imagine failure before interviews. They imagine rejection before conversations. They imagine loss before success even arrives. Their minds become theaters of fear, replaying scenes of defeat over and over again. Then they are shocked when life mirrors those expectations. But imagine becoming disciplined with imagination. Imagine refusing to mentally rehearse disaster any longer. Imagine catching fearful thoughts before they take root. Imagine deliberately choosing scenes that imply fulfillment, success, love, freedom, and victory. This is not pretending. This is conscious creation. You must stop asking whether your desired reality is possible and start asking whether you are willing to remain faithful to it internally. Possibility expands the moment consciousness accepts something as natural. What once felt unreachable can become ordinary through sustained assumption. There are people who once believed wealth was impossible for them until they changed their self-concept. There are people who once believed love would never arrive until they stopped identifying with rejection. There are people who once lived in fear until they assumed inner security and peace. The outer transformation always follows the inner shift, and yet, most people abandon the process too early because they mistake temporary appearances for final outcomes. They fail to understand that reality often rearranges itself invisibly before visible evidence emerges. Just because you cannot see movement does not mean move. Ent is absent. A seed underground appears inactive to the eye, but beneath the surface life is already unfolding. Likewise, your assumptions may already be reshaping circumstances beyond your awareness. Conversations are happening. Connections are forming. Doors are preparing to open. Paths are aligning silently. The unseen world responds instantly, even when the visible world responds gradually. That is why impatience can become destructive. Impatience is often disguised doubt. It is repeatedly asking, "Where is it?" while secretly assuming absence. But the state of fulfillment does not obsess over missing evidence. The fulfilled state rests in certainty. It trusts. It knows. You must learn to dwell mentally in the end, rather than emotionally wrestling with the middle. The middle may look confusing. The middle may appear contradictory. The middle may challenge your faith. But the end already exists the moment you accept it internally. Do not become hypnotized by the process. SS between assumption and manifestation. Focus on remaining loyal to the fulfilled identity. A person who truly assumes success no longer panics at temporary setbacks. A person who truly assumes abundance does not emotionally collapse over temporary lack. A person who truly assumes love does not define themselves by passing loneliness. Why? Because they understand identities greater than current appearance. You must become emotionally anchored in who you are becoming, rather than who you have been. The old self will try to return sometimes. Old thoughts may revisit your mind. Old fears may attempt to reclaim attention. That is normal. States that have been repeated for years do not disappear instantly. But every time you refuse to identify with the old version of yourself, you weaken it. Do not fight negative thoughts aggressively. Simply refuse to crown them as truth. Observe them without agreement. Then return gently but firmly to the desired assumption. Return to the verses. Honor yourself, who already possesses the life you seek. Return to inner certainty. Return to knowing. This repeated return is what eventually rewires consciousness. And once consciousness changes, reality has no choice but to follow. People often ask how long manifestation takes, but the deeper question is this: how long will you continue wavering between two states? Because contradiction delays embodiment. One moment believing, the next moment doubting. One day assuming abundance, the next day emotionally declaring failure. This inner inconsistency keeps many people trapped. You cannot plant one seed while continuously digging it up to check if it is growing. Faith requires stability. Not perfect thoughts every second, but dominant persistence in the chosen assumption. Think of someone learning to play an instrument. At first, the movements feel unnatural and awkward, but with repetition, they become effortless. The same principle applies to consciousness. At first, the desired state may feel unfamiliar because the old identity has been practiced for years. But through repetition, the new state becomes automatic. And when the state becomes automatic, manifestations begin appearing with increasing ease. This is why self-concept is everything. If you secretly believe you are undeserving, you will unconsciously resist receiving. If you believe life is against you, you will interpret events through struggle. If you believe opportunities always pass you by, your awareness will filter reality accordingly. But if you assume you are favored, supported, guided, and worthy, your entire experience begins shifting. You start noticing possibilities instead of barriers. You start expecting alignment instead of disappointment. You start moving through life with a different energy entirely. And energy influences everything. People can feel assumptions even when unspoken. The person who assumes confidence carries themselves differently. The person who assumes abundantly radiates differently. The person who assumes love interacts differently. Consciousness expresses itself through posture, tone, behavior, reactions, and presence. That is why changing internally eventually transforms external relationships as well. The world mirrors the state you occupy. If you enter life expecting betrayal, you unconsciously attract confirming experiences. If you enter life expecting respect and harmony, your interactions begin shifting accordingly. Your assumptions are shaping not only your perception of reality, but also the reality people reflect back to you. This is why you must become intentional about the emotional atmosphere you live in daily. Stop flooding your mind with stories of failure. Stop repeatedly discussing limitations. Stop surrounding yourself with conversations that reinforce fear and hopelessness. Every repeated message enters consciousness as suggestion. Instead, feed your mind images and ideas aligned with the reality you desire. Eat to your vision. Protect your inner peace. Protect your assumptions. The outer world will always try to pull you back toward appearances. It will tempt you to react emotionally to delay, contradiction, and uncertainty. But your power lies in remaining inwardly unmoved. Your power lies in knowing that reality is still rearranging itself around the state you have chosen. Even if the bridge of events appears confusing, continue assuming favor. Even if circumstances temporarily worsen, continue assuming alignment. Even if no evidence exists yet, continue occupying the fulfilled state internally. Because manifestation does not begin when the world changes. Manifestation begins the moment consciousness changes. And the person who understands this no longer lives as a victim of appearances. They become deliberate with thought, disciplined with feeling, and faithful to the unseen. They realize that life is not merely happening to them, it is responding to them. Every assumption biko, mess a silent command. Every belief becomes a lens shaping perception. Every emotional conviction becomes a magnet drawing corresponding experiences closer. And once you truly grasp this, you stop fearing temporary conditions because you understand they are not permanent foundations. They are shadows cast by previous states. Shadows change the moment the source changes. So if you desire a new life, do not begin by fighting the shadow. Change the inner source. Change the assumption. Change the identity. And let reality echo the transformation in its own perfect time. There is tremendous freedom in realizing that you do not have to wait for the world to change before you permit yourself to feel fulfilled. Most people postpone peace. They postpone confidence. They postpone joy until circumstances improve. They say, once I get the money, then I'll feel secure. Once I receive the relationship, then I'll feel loved. Once success arrives, then I'll believe in myself. But this way, a way of living keeps fulfillment permanently outside of reach because it places external conditions in control of internal states. The truth operates in reverse. You must first become inwardly what you wish to experience outwardly. The feeling comes before the manifestation. The identity comes before the evidence. The state comes before the circumstance. And this is why emotional mastery matters so deeply. If your emotions are constantly controlled by appearances, then your consciousness remains trapped in reaction mode. But the moment you begin choosing your internal state, regardless of external conditions, you reclaim creative authority over your life. Think about how powerful that truly is. To remain calm while uncertainty surrounds you. To remain faithful while no evidence exists yet. To remain inwardly abundant while temporary lack still appears externally. To remain convinced of your worth even before the world reflects it back. That is not weakness. That is mastery. Us people are emotionally hypnotized by what they can see, hear, and touch. They believe appearances possess final authority. But appearances are temporary expressions of old assumptions. They are echoes from previous states of consciousness. If you continue reacting emotionally to them, you keep reproducing them. But if you remain faithful to a new assumption instead, the old reality slowly loses momentum. This is why detachment from appearances is essential. Not indifference, not denial, but inner non-attachment. A deep understanding that circumstances are not permanent truths. Imagine standing before a mirror wearing old clothes while already knowing new clothes are on the way. You would not panic over the temporary reflection because you already know change is coming. In the same way, when you understand the power of assumption, you stop emotionally collapsing over present conditions because you know they are only temporary reflections of past consciousness. Your attention shifts from what is to what is becoming, and whatever you consistently give emotional attention to grows stronger within your experience. The average person spends most of their life unconsciously affirming limitations. They wake up already expecting stress. They anticipate delays before leaving home. They assume disappointment before opportunities even arise. Their mind constantly prepares for negative outcomes, and because consciousness seeks expression, reality mirrors those inner expectations. But imagine reversing that habit entirely. Imagine waking each morning with the quiet certainty that life is aligning in your favor. Imagine expecting unexpected blessings. Imagine assuming every delay is leading to something better. Imagine believing opportunities are constantly moving toward you. Imagine carrying the assumption that you are guided, protected, and favored wherever you go. That state alone transforms the way you experience life, because assumption changes perception, and perception changes interaction. When you assume the world is against you, you interpret neutral events negatively. When you assume life supports you, you begin recognizing possibilities hidden within situations that once frightened you. Two people can encounter the same event and experience it completely differently because consciousness shapes interpretation. This is why changing your inner world is far more important than controlling every outer detail. The external world is too vast to manipulate directly through force, but consciousness naturally reorganizes external experience through state. Instead of trying to force circumstances one by one, change the identity from which those circumstances emerge. Become the version of yourself for whom the desired reality feels natural. Do not merely wish for abundance. Become someone who feels inwardly abundant. Do not merely wish for confidence. Become someone who internally trusts themselves. Do not merely wish for love. Become someone who already feels worthy of devotion and connection. Everything flows from identity. And the remarkable thing is that reality often shifts in ways logic cannot predict once identity changes. Unexpected opportunities appear. Coincidences increase. Chance encounters lead to breakthroughs. Events align so perfectly they almost feel magical. Yet what people call coincidence is often consciousness expressing itself through the bridge of events. The mind limited by appearances calls it luck. The awakened mind recognizes it as assumption externalized. There will be moments during this journey when you are tempted to return to old emotional habits. Fear may whisper that nothing is happening. Doubt may point toward current conditions as proof of failure. The old self may beg for attention again because familiar states always resist replacement at first. But do not surrender. Every moment you persist in the new assumption, you are strengthening it. Every moment you refuse,